Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming back to the show Mr. John Hryhorchuk. He's the Senior Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at Texas 2036, whose mission is to make policy decisions through accessible data, long-term planning, and statewide engagement. John leads the Texas 2036 policy team with a focus on ensuring state leaders have pragmatic and sustainable solutions for nonpartisan challenges facing the state. John, welcome back.
Good to be here.
I think you're definitely at least the second. I think you're the second returning guest.
Well, I'm very excited to be here physically in person in the studio and seeing you. This is it is beautiful here.
I know I'm a whole different person in person. Zoom is not the same. So thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. Sine Die, the last day of the session was a week and a half ago. But so we're going to talk about sort of recap of the 89th Texas Legislature. We talked before the 89th Texas Legislature, but just real briefly for people that don't know, a little bit of background about you and Texas 2036.
So I lead the policy operations at Texas 2036. I've been there since 2020. Before that, I worked for Governor Abbott. What we do at Texas 2036 is try to use data to solve those long-term problems that are facing our state and also address those long-term opportunities. When it's kind of using data rather than ideology, we really try to seek out like what are the things that are necessary that every Texan can agree on so that we can make sure it's the best state to raise a family, to grow a business, to, as we approach our bicentennial in 2036, continue having the Texas that we all like, the deep pride we have in Texas, make sure that that is exactly where we want it to be and the policies there in place.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the 2036 comes from the bicentennial, and that's an important marker for the reason y'all are named 2036. What was the specific work and focus that y'all had on the 89th Texas Ledge?
This session we were focused a lot on water, workforce, health, housing, criminal justice, issues like that, and then wrapping kind of around that the entire idea of fiscal sustainability and strategic investment. So again, we have a state as having enjoyed tremendous growth over the last 20, 25 years. We want to make sure that we are taking advantage of the good times to make sure that we are investing in the future that will continue those good times for our kids and grandkids.
As a parent, that's important.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the 89th Texas Legislature more specifically. Like I mentioned, the Sine Die last day. It's Sine Die? Is that what you say?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's what everyone says, but I don't know if that's correct. Is that correct? Is that the Latin, like how a Roman would say it? It's Latin, right?
It is Latin. I went to law school in Texas. We were all taught a certain way of speaking Texas Latin.
Okay.
Like picking your cord is voir dire. It is not voir dire, or I guess that's French. Who knows? The point is we have our own way of saying things in Texas and Texas politics. And, with the Capitol's right behind me, I think that we should talk the way that the Capitol talks.
Sure. So, what do you think about the 89th Texas Ledge? What was the biggest winners?
Water, to me, is the thing that when people look back 10, 20 years from now, they're going to be so thankful that the 2025 legislature decided to take a long-term strategic overhaul of how we address water.
Okay.
I think that other big winners, HB2, it's hard not to talk about the comprehensive school finance bill that was passed and some of the things that were in there that were just really, really smart policy, really, really wise investments that, again, can have a generational impact. I think that there are things that are less on the radar. Those two are obviously, with numbers like 2 and 7, very clearly high priorities. But there are some 4-digit bills out there that, are going to also have some pretty big impacts on Texans' lives.
I guess that's, you're making me think of a question that I had not planned on asking, and I probably could have asked any guest this. But I know that they order the bills in priority. Like SB 1 is, I think, the budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important. So it's the first. And then there's second, third, fourth, so on and so forth. And now you're talking about 4-digit bills, which there are a lot of. At some point, they're just giving bills numbers.
Yes, yeah. There's a certain number that are reserved by the speaker and like for priorities, and it varies year to year. I think this year the lieutenant governor held on to SB 1 through 40. Yeah. Sometimes they hold on to things with cool numbers, like, like 100.
Sure.
But then otherwise, at a certain point, it's just, order of operations, who showed up, who filed, who, did it. And especially as you're getting in the 4,000s, it's, first come, first serve.
Is there a measure of prestige versus a 3-digit and a 4-digit bill?
I mean, there's always a prestige if you get one of the priority numbers. And then, there's always exciting to have a number that rolls off the tongue. Like I know there was a really cool early numeracy bill that was House Bill 123. Yeah. Like, when you're doing something like that can be fun when you're talking about math.
Sure. A lot easier to remember.
Yeah. So there's always kind of that. But what it really comes into play is legislative calendar. Okay. So earlier a bill is filed, the earlier it can be referred to a committee, the earlier it can be heard. Yeah. It's a lot easier to pass a bill with a low bill number just because it has more time to make it through the process. Where if you're, House Bill 4500, it might be weeks into the session before A, it's filed, and B, it's referred to committee, at which point you then have to start later in and have less time to get it done.
Yeah. No offense to House Bill 4500, whatever that bill. Whatever
I don't know which one that is, but I'm sure it's wonderful.
Yeah. You may not want to say that. Whatever.
All right, I'll leave it as I don't know what one that one is.
All right. So you mentioned water. Now, I think when we talked last time, and I know I've said this on other podcasts, water is not something that people really think about as being a problem. Water comes out of their tap. I talked to Representative Lujan out of San Antonio. I think he was and Senator Johnson. Both of them spearheaded the bottle bill, the bottle, what's it called? The bottle refund system. That's not specifically water, but they both also focused on water. But it's not something that people really think about. Water. What's wrong with water, right? What do you mean water? We have water, right? Lake Travis is a little bit low, but that's because it hasn't rained a lot. We still have water.
Yeah.
What's with water?
It is one of those things where if everything's going right in the world, you don't think about it, the taps turn on, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But if things don't go wrong, the human body requires it on a daily basis.
I've heard that.
It's one of those things really rather urgent for human life.
I think RFK Jr. has mentioned that once or twice.
Yeah, hydration is very important. And so, when we have these systems that we are as a state blessed to have massive population growth, we're up to 31 million folks. We're going to have 4 million more here by our bicentennial. It is a rapidly growing state, and that growth has benefits and complications. People here are coming with education and their families and jobs. They're not coming with their water, their energy, their houses. There are things we have to build to accommodate our growth and sustain our growth. And we as a state are blessed both to have the fiscal ability and the planning foresight to get ahead of challenges before they reach that crisis stage. Yeah. Not to say there aren't some crises happening in various communities across the state. Not to say that there aren't major agricultural impacts that are happening right now. But we're having this conversation about what is the projected need of Texas 10, 20, 50 years down the road. Where is our population going? And are we going to be able to meet the water needs of Texas in 2050 or not? And, we're having that with the time and planning horizon to solve the problem before it hurts us. Yeah. And there are other states that did not do this, right? If you think about the Western states and the challenges that they've been having, you can't just snap your fingers and build a desal plant or a reservoir or do a massive water transport project. These are things that take 5, 10, 15 years of thought and planning to do right. So the real beauty of what the legislature accomplished this session is the 20-year, $20 billion funding dedication for water is going to allow us to think about water on a different time horizon. It's not going to be, yes, every biennium we're going to still talk about water. Sure. It is, an important thing in Texas. Yeah. But more than that, we're going to be able to think about water a lot more like how we think about highway planning, where it's like, what are the big things we need to do 5, 10 years from now that we should probably get the engineers working on so that we can do it in the right way? Yeah. And just have a much smarter and more strategic plan for how to get that done.
So as far as water goes in the 89th Texas Ledge, what was passed exactly? Just the planning and the ideas, or what did they put money forward for fixing infrastructure? I know. I live in Austin. I follow Austin. They have a lot of leaking in their pipes. I think what is it, a town lake's worth of water every single year.
Yeah, it is. It is
not
a lot of leakage in our current water infrastructure. But there's, I would say that there's two different things that happen. There's the joint resolution that'll be on the ballot this November that has that 20-year dedication of $1 billion per year to the Texas Water Fund. And then there's the enabling legislation that has a kind of like, what are the allowable uses of this fund? How are we going to ensure that they actually like have legislative engagement, prioritize the projects, have transparency that this is not just money, being thrown at something, but money that is leading to more water in working pipes.
Yeah.
And having that, I think, is a very important part of the process. Chairman Perry and Chairman Harris, the architects of this, really did a great job of balancing the needs for both having new water and for addressing the aging, depreciating water infrastructure. Both are real challenges. Both require investment, and they've structured this in a very smart way to make sure both problems get addressed.
Yeah. So you also mentioned housing and HB2 as big winners in the 89th Texas Leg. HB2 being the school finance. I don't remember the exact numbers, but a lot of funding. I think $8 billion.
Yeah. There's
I said I don't remember, and I do.
Yeah.
$8 billion.
You got this.
I'm a professional. I wear a tie. $8 billion for school finance, increasing school finance. And of course, that's juxtaposed to the school choice SB3, which is, a separate topic altogether, which includes pay raises for teachers and other things as well. But you seem excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great bill. There's anytime you're putting money into our teachers, that's a good investment.
Sure.
But in addition to just the raw teacher pay raise component, there were a lot of strategic investments to increase the teacher preparation, making sure that our elementary school teachers are trained in the latest and greatest in reading and math so the students can learn. We put in incentive funding around teacher certification so that we can have well-trained teachers in the classrooms. We bolstered the teacher incentive allotment, which is the merit-based pay system, adding more money to that, more tiers, et cetera. And so it's not just the kind of across the board for experienced teachers thing. It is a lot of smart strategic investments in our teacher workforce. And that is, when you look at the data about the most important variable in classroom learning, it's the quality of your teachers. So there's no amount of helping our teachers that is too much.
Yeah. Well, I guess the merit-based pay thing is interesting. I wonder, I think that's something that a lot of people don't know exists because I don't think that, my mother was a teacher and I don't know if that existed when she retired not that long ago, maybe a decade ago. But is that something that school districts often take advantage of? Do you know?
It is growing. The teacher incentive allotment was founded in 2019 or created by the House Bill 3, the big 2019 school finance reform. And it started up, there was a pandemic, things slowed down. But there's certainly an upward trajectory there. And living in Austin, you probably see the billboards out there that say, hey, come work for Dallas ISD. We can pay you $100,000 a year or more to be a teacher. It's because they're leveraging, Dallas was at the vanguard, a lot of this merit-based pay stuff. So they've been leveraging a lot of that stuff for a little bit longer, have a little bit more established system. I think what you're going to see over the years, and what I'm very hopeful for, is truly respecting our teachers as the professionals that they are and compensating them as such, because it is such an important job for our communities. And I really like what they do in House Bill 2 with them. There's a lot of other great stuff that we're doing in House Bill 2 beyond just teachers. We literally redefine the goals of public education in this bill. This is, to me, the coolest thing in House Bill 2 that nobody talks about.
They redefine the goals?
Yes, sir. The goals of public education now clearly state that children should be graduating from high school with the skills and credentials necessary to compete in the Texas economy. And that if a student chooses to pursue post-secondary education, that they should be able to do so without the need for remediation. That has never been an explicit goal of Texas public education. But what we did in high school in this bill, both for House Bill 2 and its partner House Bill 120, they both have these goals. They have a lot of systems in terms of getting the data, what are your students doing after they graduate? If you're a counselor or a principal school board, you will now actually know, after the kid left, did they go to college? If so, did they complete? Did they persist? What were the real world outcomes for your students so you can make better choices for the next generation based off the lived experiences of the past generation? And I think that's like just making people smarter, informed in that. With the new goals, we have a new goal setting process that's going to be a part of this. My personal thought is Texas can be for high school what Mississippi has been for literacy. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mississippi Miracle.
I mean, I've only known about it it's surprising that you're even bringing it up because I had no idea what it was like 4 days ago. And then it's like I see someone talking about it on X and I'm like, okay, so I kind of get an idea, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, so Texas, we do a lot of things really well. Mississippi, as it relates to reading, was once, if not 50th, 49th,
Sure.
Persistently towards the bottom. And then about a decade ago, they started doing really comprehensive efforts to improve statewide all of their literacy efforts. And now they're meteorically rising up the charts in terms of performance because they had a concerted statewide strategy and invested in the training and et cetera to get that all done. It is beautiful to see what they have been able to do for the children in Mississippi as a result of this. And when I see what we did with high school and teachers and other things like that with some of the investments this session, like I think that, Texas is already known for having a spectacular workforce.
Yeah.
We have people who are ready for the jobs. We are poised, if not already, the onshoring, reshoring capital of America, when you want to manufacture something, step one is checking, can we build it in Texas? And if not, why not?
Yeah.
How can we fix that? Because we don't want to build anywhere else.
Sure.
When we get our workforce system aligned to meet that demand, there's no stopping us.
Yeah.
And, last session, there was the big community college reform. Completely overhauled our community colleges, aligning the workforce need. This session, they actually improved that. That's one of those sleeper 4-digit bills. It passed really early in the session. Nobody really talked about it. But we, fixed the how we define a credential of value and how we do all these outcomes-based payments for our community colleges. And then a month later, did all this really great stuff in high school. So it's just what we're doing for that kind of, 16 to 24-year-old in Texas and what they're going to be prepared to do in the Texas economy. No one else in America is doing that.
Yeah.
And I know that because they're all calling me asking, how can we copy this? We get calls from, lots of other states. And, our team is going to be going around the country this year evangelizing about how awesome Texas is because of the things that have passed over the last few sessions are truly cutting edge and making a real impact in young Texans' lives.
Yeah, so I mean, we may not see the benefits of that. Obviously, maybe not next year or this September when it's actually implemented or whatever. But I am the father. My oldest child is 10, and 4 years down the road he'll be in high school. Yeah. I hate to think about that, but he'll be in high school. And then when he so there's actual benefits for me personally in the very short term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. If your son wants to learn a trade or earn an associate's degree while they're in high school to get that one, whether or not they want to pursue 4-year university or not. We're on the brink of having a system that hopefully by the time he's there is available to everyone in Texas. Currently, there are these patches of really cool innovation happening in different parts of the state. But frankly, we're not far from being at a point where every student in Texas can access the career-aligned coursework or a completion of a credential of value while they are still in high school without compromising that post-secondary access should they choose to go off to one of our great 4-year universities.
Do they offer associate's degrees in Minecraft? My son might be at the top of the list.
Hey, maybe programming.
There you go. No, I'm glad that you're sort of highlighting all this and expanding on it because people know about HB2 and the school finance, and they know about SP3 and the school choice, but all of the other stuff that's just sort of happening that, whatever, because it's not glitzy for some reason, it's not really getting reported on. And so it's actually really cool. I mean, I've talked to Representative Gary Gates. I think he had a bill about vocational training and stuff
absolutely,
like that in high school. So it's there. It's just people don't really know about it. What about housing?
Yeah, I think this was a great session for housing. You hear a lot.
In what way?
Well, the fundamental problem, and it sounds very reductive to distill it, but that housing is a supply and demand challenge at its core. It is basic economics in that regard. We have had more people, and our number of houses has not kept up with the growth of our state. Prices go up.
Yeah.
What the legislature did across a series of different bills this session was make it easier to build more in Texas. And, I think that my favorite of these bills is the one that is called the tyrant's veto. This idea that, there's a 100-year-old law that's been on the books for a long time that basically said if a small number of neighbors did not want you to change a parcel of land, they could basically block it.
Yeah.
If they said, we don't like this, it would take a supermajority at the city council to override their objections.
Yeah.
So it made it a process where a very small number of people could block development, or even the entire city code read. I think this is what took down Code Next, maybe, back in the day. There are all these things that we live in this world of, we elect officials. We want them to be able to look out for the best interests of their communities. And if you put all these crazy, you need 90% or whatever of people to sign off on it, it gets really complicated to build more.
Yeah.
There are other things that happen that were really cool. Being able to convert an underutilized strip mall into residential, or offices to residential, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I live in an old Blockbuster now.
Yeah. And it's right now those things are exceptions, and making that a lot more standardized in terms of you should be able to utilize land in a smarter way so that humans can have a place to live that is, Texas is awesome. We should want more Texans, and find a way to make it so they can have whether, single family home, an apartment, whatever it might be, the house that works for them and their family.
Yeah. You say we want more Texans, and sure, we do want more Texans, but I mean, eventually there's got to be a test on how to become a Texan.
Well, it's I think the test is
you already got one.
Yeah, no, of course we already have the test. It's that moment, one of the things that's beautiful about Texas is, yes, there's the whole born or buried thing, but there's this. You're a Texan the moment that you're proud of being a Texan.
There you go.
And we have a lot to be proud of. And there are lots of people who have come over from other states. We have so much domestic migration to Texas. It's been documented through and through. And you talk to those folks, and some of those folks are the most proud of being Texans, even if they've only been here for 5 years. And that's awesome, because we have a lot to be proud of that we're doing here.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned before we were recording the TDCJ. Is that the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, right?
Yeah, this is another one of those sleeper bills. So it went through the sunset process. Every 12 years, there's the deep dive looking at agency operations and all that. One of the things that they found was, and this isn't going to be, crazy, but if somebody leaves prison with the skills and credentials necessary to get a job, they are more likely to get a job. And if they get a job that is, good paying and stable and all that, they are less likely to recidivate.
Okay.
And if they don't recidivate, that is great for them.
Sure.
That is great for society. And it's great for, your tax dollars.
Yeah.
So one of the most high leverage interventions you can have in a prison is education and workforce training.
Yeah.
But yet over the last decade, we had this precipitous decline in enrollment in post-secondary programs, and massive wait lists growing for prisoners who wanted to better themselves and get ready for their release. Because almost everyone that is in a Texas prison will eventually be back into the community. And so there were efforts made this session to really center education as part of our statewide recidivism goals.
Yeah,
leveraging the Windham School District, which has historically been the K-12 of our prison system, to draw in the dual credit system, and how are we going to leverage our community colleges, and how are we going to find those credentials that are particularly useful for individuals with records. How are we going to get them the occupational licenses? That was a separate bill, but how can you get, if you are skilled in a trade now based off of it, how can we have it so that you are ready on day one with the license that you will be eligible for?
Yeah.
But so you're not sitting there for 6 months doing paperwork without the money coming in.
Yeah. Whether it be electrician or whatever. Yeah.
And
sure.
there are some things you can't do with certain records, but that's all screened for.
Sure.
And so, but it really can change the trajectory of these folks' lives, and really just it is the corrections part becomes a little bit more salient.
Yeah. Did you say that there's a K through 12 in our prison system?
Yes, yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not the K, but it's
We don't have a lot of kindergartners in prison.
No,
Sure.
no.
I guess I would have assumed that not the K, but I mean, what is it exactly?
Yeah, so Windham School District, what they have historically done, and they're really great at what they do. They have a challenging population. When you think at there's an intake about what is the average literacy of an individual who comes in to prisons, and this is old data. I don't know if this is still accurate, but when we looked at this for the 2019 school finance reform, I think it was in the ballpark of like the average individual entering TDCJ was at a 6th to 8th grade level of literacy.
Okay.
And so when you have those folks and people who have not necessarily graduated high school, again, we have a 90% high school graduation rate. It's pretty awesome by national standards. It still means 10% aren't.
Yeah.
How are we going to get those folks their GED?
Yeah.
How are we going to get them the caught up, basic adult literacy? Adult literacy is one of those things we don't talk about a lot as a state. It's really important.
Yeah.
And those kind of foundational things that. So that is what Windham has historically done, and they've done a great job at that. Now we're going to be able to leverage dual credit and getting our community colleges a lot more embedded into the various units around the state, so that you can have whether it's an associate's degree or a credential, a lot more workforce aligned.
Yeah.
Skills and credentials.
Yeah, go out there and be productive and self-respect and respect from the community and all that stuff. Yeah. That's great. So in the 89th Texas Leg, as with the 88th and 87th, all the way to the first, I'm sure, there were probably some losers. Not that they're bad or whatever, but maybe something that should have passed but didn't, or wasn't focused on enough, or no one paid any attention at all. Any thoughts on that?
I think that this was a very good legislative session for the stuff that's kind of like the foundational things for government to operate and our children, all that, like the future. I think there are things where, some bills got pretty close to the finish line, but couldn't quite make it over.
Yeah.
I think about like House Bill 4, which was part of the A through F accountability system, and addressing some of the lawsuits that have been happening to block high school ratings and things like that. That one didn't make it out of conference committee, unfortunately. But I mean, we're seeing right now. I mean, they just released the STAR end of course exam data earlier this week, and you can just see some of these disparities in the data that show that yes, we have made incredible investments in our high school in this legislative session, but there are some real challenges that. We need the data and transparency of whether people like or don't like the STAR. I think everyone on both sides was like, we need to get rid of the STAR and replace it with something else. Cool. Let's replace it with something that's still provides parents and taxpayers with a level of transparency. Because I mean, there are schools in Austin that it is. We're digging in on this data where 1 in 10 students are at grade level in algebra.
What?
There's a high school in Northeast Austin right now. It is, mind you, pre-pandemic, we're in the 50s, doing great.
Sure.
Well, 50s is not great, but 50s is a lot better than 10.
If you go from 10 to 50, you're doing great.
Yeah. If you go to 50 to 10, all the alarm bells should be going off.
Yeah.
And we know about these trends because we have a transparent system that is clear and understandable for parents and legislators. We had a real opportunity to improve that system this session, and nothing bad happened. The status quo is still in place, but I think that when we look at 2027, there'll be a real opportunity to how do we better align to where we want to be as a state on education? Because I mean, 10% of students doing algebra at grade level in high school is not acceptable.
Yeah, and I mean, I also saw the STAR exam results, and I think we are at 47 or 49% statewide for Algebra 1 for proficiency or at grade level, and I think it's all right. There's an improvement. It went up 2% since the pandemic, which is 15% below, 15 points below what it was pre-pandemic or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I can't help but think to myself, all right, so that must have been 65% before the pandemic. We're at grade level for Algebra
Yeah,
1? That's a large number of kids that are not at grade level.
I think that there's this there's disparity, and some folks, I think it was a group called Learning Heroes, did an analysis of like surveying parents, asking them, do you believe your child is at grade level or not?
Yeah.
And they look at the report cards and they get A's and B's, and they're like, yeah. So 90+% of parents think their child's at grade level, and then you get the kind of the cold hard star report cards. I think they're going out to parents today.
Yeah.
And half of our kids can't do math, half of our kids can't read at grade level, and that juxtaposition is startling. And I think last session, the 2023 one, the legislature did a lot of like what is causing this disconnect between the grades and the exams. And one of the things they found was there were curriculum challenges. Not the curriculum that gets all the conversation in the press, but more like students in a third grade class are not being taught third grade materials. They are not being taught the TEKS that the state board has gone through all this effort. We had this entire process.
Yeah.
It was something in the ballpark of like 20% of TEKS were being taught. Or 20% of instructions was at grade level. And it's bizarre to say. I will say I was a military kid. We bounced around the country when I was a child. Okay. I guess it is a blessing of sorts to be able to have the transparency of when we moved from Del Rio, Texas, fantastic public elementary school, to another state. When I was in sixth grade, I showed up in my sixth grade classroom, was literally handed a book that said fourth grade math.
Whoa.
So I wasn't at that school for much longer.
Sure.
We had a degree of transparency there that it was not going to be grade level instruction. Yeah. Students and parents in Texas did not have that and have not had that. So in 2023, Chairman Buckley put together a high quality instructional material package that has been rolled out. It's now often called Bluebonnet. That is aligned to the state standards. It has the best science of teaching reading embedded in it. It has really good numeracy and math in there. Some schools are starting to get this stuff into the classrooms, hopefully this fall. But it's you pass a bill, it takes some time to implement. Sure. Yeah. But it continues to be one of those big things. I think the legislature made some further refinements on this session. I know there's one of those round numbered bills, House Bill 100. You kind of went in and said like, hey, why are we using taxpayer dollars to fund curriculum that's bad? Yeah. Like we now have this process of figuring out what's good and bad. Like we now know that there are a few of these things out there that, whole language methods of teaching reading that cause kids not to learn to read. Let's not use taxpayer dollars on things that we know actively don't work. Still have discretion. You don't have to buy the TEA product, or more likely, you don't have to download the TEA product. Sure. You can get something from a textbook publisher, but like there are good products. Yeah. And there are not good products. Let's steer the taxpayer dollars to what actually helps kids learn.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would hope they would have already been doing that, but things happen, I guess. It's not just in session when stuff gets done. There's interim charges that get passed down, I think, from Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if they've handed those out yet. I don't think so. Are they?
No, they're
way too early.
Yeah, you got to get through the veto period.
They're still, they're still napping, I guess, maybe. No, they're not napping. I'm sure they're working very hard.
They're showing up for a lot of signing ceremonies, a lot of celebrations.
Yeah, well, I know they're busy. They got a lot going on. I put my foot in my mouth. I apologize. They're welcome on the show anytime. So there's going to be interim charges. What do you think? And what happens in the interim is often a good sign of what's going to happen in the session. Any inkling, any thoughts about the interim?
Well, yeah. So the interim charge process will kick off in a few months, and they'll start asking, the senators and representatives what they think should be looked at. But there are a few things because of the bills they passed, we already know they have to look into. Yeah. So, for example, childcare. There is, assuming the bills are signed into law, there is a bill that creates a governor's task force to evaluate childcare. There's a bill that creates this thing called the Quad Agency. Basically, we have 4 agencies that own a piece of childcare, and they have different regulatory structures that often contradict. Yeah. And it's a huge pain for the practitioners who are trying to do the best thing at the lowest cost for the most kids. Sure. So they are going to be stood up and going to have to start working on things. There's also the Texas Workforce Commission, which is in charge of all subsidized childcare, and the Health and Human Services Commission, which is in charge of the licensing of childcare facilities, are both going through the sunset process.
It sounds like getting into childcare is a real pain. As of right now,
it is a difficult industry.
Yeah.
But we had this entire Doge effort this last session.
Yeah.
I think that the things that were stood up in terms of regulatory review and compliance, and how do we figure out to make to get rid of some of these contradictions, feed in nicely to the childcare conversation, because every parent wants to make sure their child is safe and in a proper learning environment and things like that. But we want to make sure that, like, from a childcare perspective, that we're not putting on these unnecessary burdens that don't increase safety or increase learning or increase, the things that we value. So I think, when we're talking about that kind of interim activity, childcare is one of those areas that might get a lot of attention this interim, just because there are so many structural things that are going to kind of force the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that we need to have as a state.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in Travis County, they passed a bond. Was it late last year? Maybe, I think in November, to increase the tax a little bit specifically for childcare.
Yeah.
I mean, childcare is really important, and people. I think Mayor Watson made it part of his like something that he wanted to accomplish, like one of his top priorities here in Austin. I know that's local politics, but still, it highlights, helps to illustrate the issue that it is very important.
And every community has its own version of this problem.
Sure.
There are those areas where there's not enough childcare to meet the needs of communities. There are parts of the state where we're told that they have classrooms that are a quarter full, and it causes a different financial strain on the provider. So, just getting a better understanding of the diversity of our 254 county mega state is, I think, going to be helpful for lawmakers going forward.
So looking ahead even further into the 90th Texas Legislature, that's got to be a big deal, the 90th. So what do you hope? What do you expect? I mean, you're talking about maybe childcare in the interim. Maybe they'll tackle that. Maybe there'll be more on water. Maybe it'll be more education. Who knows? What do you hope they do?
I think the next couple legislative sessions are going to be key for building this idea of like, if we as a state or as a nation are serious about domestic manufacturing, what are the things that we can do to really truly build out a made in Texas brand? Yeah. Like, what are the things that are necessary? Yes, we need the workforce. Yes, we need the energy. Yes, we need the water. How are we going to have the various infrastructures in place to build the factories, to make sure people have childcare, to go to work, to make sure that our ports are ready to export all the great goods that are being produced in Texas? Because when we think about the long-term economy of Texas and what we can be, we have this assets that no one else can compete with. We have a coast. We have a 1,200 mile border. We have space. We have physical space, and then we also have literal rocket ships being launched from every other corner of the state.
That we do.
We have all these incredible assets that everyone else would be jealous of having. So how do we harness that going forward? What are the policies that we need to be putting in place kind of on the front end? The legislature has been doing a great job having that kind of, thinking 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line here lately. I think that the national conversations around, we need to be building component pieces in the United States for security or resiliency purposes. Like, Texas is poised to do that. It's why we've done such a great job with the CHIPS Act stuff and semiconductors and things like that. I know that there was efforts this session around quantum computing and making sure we're at the front end of that. Always artificial intelligence going to be on the front end of those conversations. Yeah. A lot of disruptive, but positive and negative things that we're going to have to deal with in those days. So, I think that thinking about, the 2027, the 2029, the 2031 legislative sessions, we as Texans have the ability to just be optimistic and harness that optimism of our growth and of our opportunity, because we have so many assets and we have the people, the resources, and the gumption to get the stuff done. Yeah.
Yeah. The AI stuff is really, it's going to be interesting for sure. Yeah. Luckily, AI can't take my job because I'm a podcaster, so just try it. Yeah, that's interesting. It's all, I mean, it's all centered around business and making sure people can do business.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you want to build something, you got to have a plant. If you want to sell it somewhere, you got to be able to ship it, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I appreciate, is there something from the 89th that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about? I'm sure there's a million.
Oh God, there's so much cool things that happened. I am just, kind of in still that haze after session where, so much activity happens there in the last week or two where all these great things are happening. And then afterwards, you're kind of looking back and going, just wow. Yeah. Wow to the 181 legislators that were a part of the process. Yes to the thousands of legislative staffers that were a part of this. But it's really awesome to me think about, they're in place for 140 days every 2 years. And that sense of urgency, I think, is very helpful because, we as an organization think about 10, 15, 20 years down the road what we need to be doing. But then it all has to be addressed in a very, very short and rapid period. And that sense of that the legislature goes in there and prioritizes, and throughout all the noise and all the chaos was still able to do such incredible things like investing in our schools, investing in our water. All of that is just, to me, truly magnificent.
Cool. Well, I think that's a great place to end then. John Hryhorchuk of Texas 2036. You want to plug a website or social media?
Texas2036.org, or follow us on X. It's Texas 2036.
Easy enough. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you.